Good evening, everybody. It must be Thursday night. Thank you for having me in your living room and joining you today. We have the biggest show of the year. We have, and I don't mean bonanza or we're not giving away prizes. We have 3 guests tonight, all from Southeastern Connecticut Community Center of the Blind, located locally. We're going to get into everything that they do. Again, this is Born Political. This is Thursday night, so sit back. We're going to learn a little bit more about this great nonprofit that's local to our area and the 3 individuals that are here representing it tonight. I want to welcome you guys to the show. One at a time, I guess. We'll go through. You just say your name, and then I'll go back and right here. I'm sorry, Tammy.
I'm Tammy Paradis.
Yep.
I'm Kevin Harkins.
Kevin Harkins.
And Wendy Lusk.
And Wendy Lusk. So again, I'm so excited because I've gotten to meet so many great people, and people watching the show. They can't really understand the amount of work that happens and goes behind these nonprofits. You guys are no different. You're a large group, but I do, because it's called Born Political, I think it's important that people know where the folks that are being interviewed are from, or get a little bit of a background. So we'll take a couple minutes. And Tammy, where are you from? Born Political? Where were you born?
I was born in Orange County, California.
Way out west.
Way out west, and I was born with Usher syndrome, which is a dual sensory hearing loss and vision loss. And I am married. I have 3 daughters, and we moved to Connecticut in 1992.
And what kind of brought you this way? I know the wind blows this way.
The wind seriously blows
The
this
jet
way.
stream.
When I was 32, I was diagnosed with the Usher syndrome. Up till 32, we didn't know what it was.
Wow.
Right, and so it was a matter of, when do I stop working? Do I have to stop working? And my husband's from Boston, and he says, let's go to the East Coast where I can make a living. You can stay home and raise the kids.
Wow.
So we came to Connecticut.
So was the 32 years just a function of it was rare, or just
It's very rare.
It is.
You're born with partial or totally deafness, in which I only just got the hard of hearing. And then when I was about 15, my vision started to change a little bit.
Okay.
Mainstream most of my life. I drove up until 1999. And then it just, now the peripheral is pretty much down to about the size of a nickel.
Yep.
And then it's foggy, and some days are good, some days are bad.
And we know large green numbers you can read because the clock in front of us, right before the show. So
That's
we've
my
determined that
style.
you can see that
Yeah.
very well.
She said,
Yeah. Well, nice to meet you. And Kevin, welcome to the show.
thank you. Good to be here, Jeff.
I know we talked off air. I know you're a local guy, but let's hear your story.
Well, I was born in Norwich, Connecticut. I know, boring, but actually I did move around the country. I was born 2 months prematurely and had something that many people have heard of, retinal endothelial or RLF. Very common with kids back in the 50s that were born prematurely. They put me in an incubator. The oxygen levels were not adjusted correctly. They were still learning, understand,
Yep.
back at this period of time. And the joke around my family is, I'll say, well, it could have done brain damage, and my cousins and brothers say, well, but fortunately it only damaged my eyes. I had some vision for about 22 years, and then while I was living out in California, about 3 miles from her, I didn't know her at the time, and I did lose what little vision I had. I've moved around the country. I lived in Oregon, came back to Connecticut in '94. I've lived back in Norwich since '96. Have always been somewhat involved, and I don't know whether it's by design, it's certainly by somebody's design, but I've always been involved with either NFB or ACB chapters or some sort of advocacy work for the blind. And it took me a while. I came back to this area. I had heard of the Center of the Blind. I just was kind of, I guess my mind, my psyche was in other places. I had a friend who belonged to the center. I visited. I donated some books and magazines. About, I don't know, 9 or 10 years ago, I said, yeah, check this out. And it's just an amazing organization, which we're going to talk about.
And that's it. 9 or 10 years later, you're still here and still
I'm
excited.
loving it. Yeah.
That's it. I think that's in your personality
Wendy keeps
too,
us
though.
busy.
Yeah, right.
And then Wendy, welcome to the show. Thank you.
Thanks
Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having us. I'm Wendy Lusk. I am from North Tonawanda, New York, which is just between Buffalo and Niagara Falls. Born and raised there. Met my husband in '71. Got married in '72. 9 months later. 5 years later, had 2 children, and we now have 2 grandchildren. And I've volunteered for the center for probably the past 30 years. And it wasn't until 2020 that I had the opportunity to become the executive director. And so that's kind of sort of, I've always had that volunteer work in me. And it was a great opportunity, and I jumped on it, and here I am.
We're blessed to have her too.
Yes.
She's amazing. She really is.
Well, yeah, we wouldn't go that far, but 3 months later, in 2020, we had to close the doors for COVID,
Yep.
and we didn't open up until 6 months later, and it was a struggle trying to keep that organization afloat at that time. So
But we
did a
stayed
lot of work.
connected.
Yes, we all stayed connected, all helped one another, did everything virtually by phone conversations, and kept our organization afloat, and now it's bigger and better.
The dark days of our country that
no
were just a
kidding.
couple of years ago.
No kidding.
And I think, thankfully, I think they're becoming a little bit of a distant memory, but we have learned a lot from it. We have learned that we can operate without being in the room together. We learned those things. We also know it's not as good.
Yeah.
The communication's not as good and the help's not as good. It's hard to get things done if people aren't sitting in a room
Well,
together.
communications is wonderful as long as you learn how to communicate.
Yeah. and so with all groups, you have a name. You came up with a name, and before the show, I was making sure that I could get it down. And I made the mistake of saying Center for the Blind. It's Center of the Blind, and words matter. And you said no, there's a reason for it, and of course there is, because when we come up with words for a group, we want to make sure we're being inclusive. Or not, or for whatever reason you came up with it, and just it struck me that was the for and the of was a deal, and I think we could just start talking about that, because I think it probably tells a little bit of a story about the group.
Well, it's really an organization. It was founded, by the way, in 1972, and it has always been a member-centric organization. That's my phrase. I made that up. You like that?
I like it.
Sounds good.
And because it's an organization that's run by the members. We are run by the blind. We're not a bunch of, leaders off in some ivory tower that are simply doing things for someone else. We're here helping ourselves and accessing resources and advocating for ourselves and for our friends and members, of course, too.
Yep.
But rather than just being for the blind, we are comprised of blind and visually handicapped people. And every day we're working together. Tammy and Wendy are together in the office every day.
Yep.
I happen to be the vice president of the board. Our president, Scott Skinner, and the rest of our fine board of directors are involved in most cases every day, doing something, involved in some issue or question, or answering a question over the phone, or coming up with new ideas and plans for the future. We are an organization of the blind.
Well, I think
that's what the of's about.
I think it's a great answer, and I knew, because when we talked about it off air, that it is. It's sometimes the one word that means so much.
Pivotal, yeah.
It's pivotal. It
That
means
and
a
I
lot.
think community.
The community.
You
yeah.
know, because people will say, and we do it too, we abbreviate Center of the Blind in our conversation, but it's a community.
Yep.
It's a community center of the blind of southeastern Connecticut. And I want to be totally upfront about something. I know we've talked about this amongst ourselves. Sometimes the word blind scares people, and I get it. It's a scary word in a way. But we are an organization. Anybody who has any kind of visual impairment, visual loss, is facing the eventuality of visual loss, is low vision, or perhaps is blind and has multiple disabilities that they're confronting.
Yeah.
That's who we are, and that's what we're about. And we don't want people to be scared off by the word blind.
That's an excellent point. Now, is it just a coincidence that it was established the same year you were married? Or do you claim that as one of your as your early beginnings?
No, it just that we celebrated our 50th anniversary last year, so we're going on 51 years. So it's easy to remember my anniversary, I guess.
That makes it easier. Well, so I came up on my 50th anniversary of birth in 1971. So we're about the same age as pretty much as the center.
Yeah.
But what that tells me though is, any group that we've met again so far, it's always about advocacy for whatever they're fighting for, or whoever they're working with, or what you're trying to move forward. And I know we have come a long way. I know there's been just by the street lights, sometimes the noisemakers helping folks cross the street. I know those are things that I physically saw while I was in the legislature. But what are some things that we're lacking, or some things that maybe, Tammy, I don't know if there's something in your mind that you're like, you know what, I'd like to get done for the person behind me, or is there something that you have a goal of?
Tammy deals with advocacy and referral every day.
Yep.
Yeah.
One of the things that I would really love to see is more centers opened
Okay.
in the state. We're the only center in the state of Connecticut.
I did not realize that.
Yeah.
Yep.
The only one. And when we did our open house, we had a representative come out and did a proclamation for the center of the line and advised that we might be able to start other centers in the four corners, because BESB, who is the Services for the Blind state agency, it's in Windsor.
Okay.
We can't get to Windsor.
Yeah.
Traveling and transportation is very difficult for people who are visually impaired or blind. So that's why we would like to see other centers opened in different areas of the state to be
And
able.
where are you physically now?
New London,
You're in New London physically now.
right.
Right.
And that's where we've been the last 50 years, is in New London.
It's amazing because when you think about it, a lot of things that start off will be Hartford, New Haven, Bridgeport, Waterbury, actually population centers.
Right.
And a lot of services tend to gravitate to New London. I think a lot in part because it is a small city-like community, and they do welcome it. But it's kind of disappointing to hear that there's only one. I thought there were multiple.
Nope, only one. Yeah.
So the
We're
one
sort of the
center of
envy
the
of the
blind, but
state,
are there
yeah.
other organizations that are doing it in corners, or there's not really a place where folks can go? And say if I was in Danbury and I was looking for a place to, there's not
There
really.
Really,
may
we're
be,
unique,
I was going to say, there may be support groups.
Yeah.
We've heard of certain support groups throughout the state of Connecticut. I think Middletown may have one. We were just on a meeting conference the other day and with BCAC, and there are other support groups out there, but there's not centers like we have, what we have to offer. There's so much that we have to offer in our building to those who come in off the street or our members that it's amazing what there is. We have adaptive computers that have Zoom text on it for enlargement, or we have JAWS, which is text to speech.
Yeah.
We have video magnifiers for them to use. We have adaptive aids at our center that they can purchase, talking clocks, talking blood pressure kits, talking thermometers. All of that is available for our members or guests to come off the
A
street
talking
and
keychain.
purchase. Yeah,
Talking keychains,
talking
so.
keychains.
But I think whenever you have and we do it with Community Speaks Out, you find out the services that are needed when folks that need the service are in connection. And usually that happens when you do have a center or an area.
Right.
And now you talked about the fear part of it, because I do believe there's a lot of fear.
Oh, yeah.
When somebody, now both of you were faced with, I have vision now, and in both of you, it sounds like there was this path where you were starting to lose it, and you knew that there's one day that you won't be able to see anything. That's a fearful thing. What helps fear sometimes are answers and other people that walk the road. And that has to do with anything that you're ever going through. There's groups for everybody, but what do you think, Frank? So now, what would you say if you got some kind of diagnosis where you say, okay, in 10 years you're probably not gonna be able to see? Do you go down to the center today and meet you and talk, or what would you recommend? Or
We'd love it if people would do that.
yep.
It's scary for people.
Yeah.
It's like anything else. If a doctor told you that you had some other chronic condition
Yeah.
that was eventually going to have its way with you, you'd be terrified.
Yeah.
But we want to, we want to be we are a welcoming place. In addition to all the advocacy and referral, we have support groups. We also try to be a place where people can gather. We have lunch and learn programs. We have opportunities primarily on Tuesdays or when there's not anything else going on at the center, for people just to come in, have a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
We usually have cookies or something around, unless I've eaten them all.
Well, cookies. What kind of cookies? Maybe.
Well, it
maybe I will
depends.
come
What do
over.
we have this week? But
Chocolate
an,
chip.
an opportunity for people to vent.
Yeah.
I mean, we all have difficulties. We need to share with people
Exactly.
with whom we have commonality
Yeah.
and people who have similar experiences. And whatever you're experiencing, whether it's vision loss, whether it's grandma or grandpa losing their vision and they're in denial, denial is everywhere. It's scary.
It is.
We're
That's
all
the
human.
scariest.
And the more we can connect with each other and say, hey, I've been there. I've experienced that. Let's move forward together. So we have a lot of socializing that goes on. We have dinners every month. We're getting ready for our big annual picnic. We have a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And people need that too.
Yeah, that you have to have fun.
Right.
And what do you think, Wendy? Now moving forward, you have these events for picnics and stuff like that. Is there something that would the public would be invited to, or is it all volunteers? How do you?
For the most part, our fundraisers are where the public is invited
Okay, yep.
to. And we do have a fundraiser coming up in
Ooh,
October.
do we ever, yeah?
It's White Cane Day. It's our pancake breakfast. It's our second annual pancake fundraiser.
White cane breakfast,
It
yeah.
will be on October 15th at the VFW in New London, right on Garfield Avenue.
I've had
And-
pancakes there many times.
Oh, yeah.
October 15th
Well,
is a
then we'll
good
be
day.
expecting you.
We'll have tickets available the 1st of August, and we'll be selling them at $15 a ticket for adults, $5 for children. And we'll have raffle prizes and door prizes galore. So that's our biggest fundraiser that we do.
And that's once a year.
That's once a year, right?
Okay. And how many people would we expect at something like that? Obviously, it's
Last year was our first one. I think we had approximately 160 people show up. So
Excellent.
we think it's going to be a little bit bigger this year. And obviously, once the word gets out, we're working on it a little sooner and getting tickets printed and getting the word out, especially now that we have a brand new website. And our Facebook has been pretty active as far as getting the word out. So we're really kind of pushing social media now that we've been, I think, more in the community, active in the community.
and people have reached out to me. 'Cause, I mean, I think we're in a place in our country now where we watch so much negative news and people get down. Say, how do you stay positive? I'm saying, I meet positive people.
Yeah.
I meet people and talk to people who are making a difference and moving forward.
Yeah.
And I love to tell people, go see these folks and maybe you can help.
Yeah.
What would it look like for someone that wanted to volunteer, and what are the opportunities?
You were reading my mind.
Okay. I am good at reading minds.
Yeah, good.
I should have
You're-
told you that.
We're right on the same page. But we welcome volunteers. We need volunteers. Whether it's running errands or helping out in the office. What we really are looking for right now, really and truly, is drivers. We have some wonderful drivers who volunteered to take folks to center activities or dinners or picnics or doctor's appointments,
Yep.
help them run errands and so forth. Our volunteers, some of them are getting on in years and they don't like to drive at night. We have some folks who go to Florida in the wintertime. And so we're starting to run a little short. So if you're looking for a way to give back to your community, if you have some time, talk to Wendy. We'll give out the phone number if it's not already on the screen. I don't know how you do things here. I've never been on your show before.
It's
But-
up right now.
yeah, and it's based on your convenience. When you have time to help us out driving, you will have a good time. You'll meet some interesting people. And I would say, Tammy, you help me out here. People who are visually impaired or blind, I think transportation is their top difficulty, isn't it?
It is, absolutely, their top problem, if you want to call it that. It's just trying to get around. You learn to ask people, but
Yeah.
it's not our strength to where we want to just start depending on everybody and they, oh God, here comes, she wants another ride. So, you have your difficulties getting rides. But I will say, outside of volunteers, that in this local area, there is good transportation for public,
Yeah.
like the paratransit, ECTC, SEAT.
Yeah.
But there are limitations.
There,
It
exactly.
doesn't run 7 days a week.
Right,
It doesn't run at night after 6 o'clock.
right.
You have to have reservations ahead of time.
And it's not in all counties,
Yeah.
not in all cities.
I mean,
and
it's great, don't
this
get me
area.
wrong.
Right.
But
Right.
it has limitations.
And that would lead me back to you when we first was speaking earlier. You and your husband as a family made a decision that maybe you couldn't work anymore.
Right.
So that's a dynamic that most couples with children don't have to face.
No.
It's something that you did, and now was it because something that you had a job, and I'm sure you could. There's jobs that anyone can do, but the job that you were doing and employed at did you need your vision to continue it, or could you have stayed, or?
I could have stayed, but California's economy is very expensive.
Yes.
And so we just didn't see that, that I
Wasn't
would be
gonna
able
work.
to continue to make the income that I was making.
Yeah.
The credit union where I worked was just like all hands on, we'll do whatever it takes. And
Yeah.
they had me up for a promotion, and I'm like, I just can't do it.
Yeah.
So we left and we went to Connecticut. And then in 2007, after our children had already grown up, my husband and I went to South Carolina in Charleston.
Yeah.
There was no public transportation whatsoever there.
Yeah.
So I was just like, I couldn't do anything. I had neighbors that would take me. They were all friendly, but it was
Yeah.
like, I want to stay independent.
Yeah.
So we moved back up here to Connecticut, and the transportation I can use around here.
So if there is a young family, because I mean that's got to be that's table discussions there. Mm-hmm. Where you find out, and that could be anything. I mean, we deal with folks in addiction, and it's life changing.
Right.
Someone has to go away, and someone has to get better or figure something out, and their life changes. And it for some folks it's very instant. For you, it sounded like you had a little bit of a buffer to prepare, like you thought you were
Yes.
going to be able to. So some people it's faster, and some people
It's immediate, and you don't have time to adjust to it. You don't
Yeah.
have time to think about it. And luckily, in my case, I was able to do that. And I also, was proactive.
yeah.
I went to school for the blind in South Carolina. I went to the school for deafblind in Long Island at Helen Keller. I could see normal font, normal screen.
Yeah.
It's just my peripheral was going. But it's like, let's take care of this now.
Yeah.
And that's my resource that I like to offer to people. Don't ignore the fact that you might be going blind. Learn what tools are available to you now.
Get
May
ahead of
not
the
need
game.
them now.
Yeah.
Well,
But-
I think most people live in fear.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
when you put your head down at night and you have something where you're losing your vision, or if whatever it is that's ailing you, there's some folks that don't get cancer treatment that feel lumps,
Right.
because they don't want to deal with the situation.
It's scary.
And it's scary. But if I could walk in, I don't want to talk to anybody that went to college to learn about how you feel about when you went blind. I want to talk to somebody that went through it.
Right.
I don't want to talk to somebody in
Right.
addiction that's a doctor that can help me. I do believe there's a place and a position,
Right.
but I want to talk to someone that actually went through it and actually is living through it.
One of the
And-
big things as you know, is macular degeneration.
Yeah.
We have a macular degeneration support group.
Yeah.
And it's turning out to be very
It's a
popular.
really good group.
A lot of people dealing with that right now.
Well, I mean, it's a loss of a sense. So there's got to be depression involved. There has to be a lot of things that go through your mind, and I'm
Right.
never going to be able to see my loved one again, or just things that most people don't ever have to think about. My niece actually, when she was young, we thought when she saw a shadow, she would feel the ground before she walked across, and we just thought she was being young, and
Right.
she ended up, she is blind. But she, I remember having this deep sadness thinking that she wasn't going to be able to do X, Y, and Z. And you know what? That's not really how it worked
Right.
out. She's done a lot of different things.
Right.
She's traveled the world. She's been to places I've never been.
Exactly, yeah.
It's not limiting. It's only limiting if you limit yourself.
Exactly. And that's a part of our mission statement is that we teach them to become independent and maintain that independency by the products that we have, the services we offer, things like that. When we meet and a new client for the first time, usually Tammy and I will be in the office and we invite a customer in or a client to come in to see what we have, to see what's available. One of the things when they leave, our final statement is we're going to give you hope. At the end of that conversation, we've given that client hope that there is light beyond being blind, that there is light at the end of the tunnel for them, that there is available services, available products for them to use, that they don't have to go through it alone. And that's what we do at the center. Our slogan that Kevin recently created for the center is building a better future for the blind. And that's exactly what we're doing. We're trying to build a better future for those who are blind or visually impaired.
One of the beautiful things about the center, Joe, is that you don't have to be blind to join. We welcome anybody as a member who wants to be a part of this community.
That's the great part of it, because I think what took us a little bit of while, and we learned it organically, but at Community Speaks Out, we started our groups, and it happened to be just the parents, because we were the ones being affected, and we were the ones trying to figure out how to get through it. When ultimately, when we have folks that are in addiction come and speak in front of our group, parents that look at that kid up there speaking that can't listen or hear their kid say something, but can listen to somebody else say it, and then believe it and believe that it's something and it's real and that their kid's going through the same thing. It creates a different kind of empathy and a bond.
Right.
So I think you need allies as well. You need to be together as a group and figure things out and find out and advocate what works for you best. But allies are super important. People that understand that, oh, you know what, not everyone has the same exact life.
Right.
And we have to make, and the street light thing was amazing to me, because when you press the button, it tells you how many seconds you have.
Yep.
All those things that seem like nothing to someone that can see are everything to someone who can't. And that's really, but that again, I call it, this is my little thing, but I say I want to make everything plug and play. When we leave and we're not here anymore, I want to make it easier for the next person behind me, and that sounds like what you guys are doing here.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
We're trying. We're doing our best. And you touch on technology. It's hard to keep up with technology because things are changing so fast.
Yep.
And if we can work together, which we do, and when possible, we network with other organizations, the Bureau of Education and Services for the Blind, which is the state agency Tammy referred to earlier. We've been up, Tammy and Wendy have been up talking to one of the great organizations up in Rhode Island that helps the blind. We learn from each other.
And I told you this was going to be the fastest half hour of your life.
Yeah, and it's over, isn't it?
I think it was. This is Born Political. It was Thursday night. This is a group that I wanted to interview for a very long time. We had it scheduled out. We had a couple my miscommunications. So I really want to thank you guys for coming here tonight, for sharing your group. You guys see on the TV how you can get a hold of them. I'm sure there's volunteers. Every group needs them. This is a great one. Hopefully we'll see you guys next week. And thank you all for being on the show.
Thanks,
Thank
Joe.
you.
Appreciate
Thank you
it.
very much.
Great job.